Welcome to the NZ Travel Show, an interactive show where you can ask your NZ travel questions to the experts behind nzpocketguide.com, New Zealand's largest travel guide. The NZ Travel Show will start in exactly 2 minutes. Just the time for you to hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. nzpocketguide.com has over 3,000 articles covering all aspects of travelling in New Zealand, from a working holiday gap year to tips for a perfect family holiday. The site also features dozens of pre-made itineraries that you can use to plan your ideal trip in New Zealand. It's all available for free at nzpocketguide.com, so check it out. The NZ Travel Show is hosted by Robin, the Operations Manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, the company behind nzpocketguide.com. The New Zealand Travel Show is also hosted by Laura, a journalist and editor-in-chief of South Pacific Pocket Guide and all its publications, including nzpocketguide.com. We're exactly 1 minute away from the NZ Travel Show. Get yourself comfortable and start asking your NZ travel questions in the chat. Robin and Laura will go over them when the show starts. In 30 seconds, our experts will be live from New Zealand to give you all the practical New Zealand travel tips you need, from the best transport options to the best accommodations and activities to choose for the perfect New Zealand holiday. Live from New Zealand, this is the NZ Travel Show with your travel experts, Robin and Laura.
Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, the 4th of August, already August 2024, and this is the NZ Travel Show. We're cold.
Yes.
Because it's August, and in New Zealand it is winter. We got the opposite than what you guys have in the Northern Hemisphere, and therefore we are very much cold. Anyway, how are we doing today, Laura?
Cold. Other than that, I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
Absolutely fabulous. So in the live chat we have Anthony, which is already saying Morena from Rodeo, California. Laura, what does Morena mean?
It means good morning in the indigenous language of New Zealand, which is Te Reo Maori.
Nice one. He also said that he's sorry to miss the last two shows. He bought a RV, which is really awesome.
Oh, cool.
That's cool. And he was up in a Sac. I don't know where Sac is, but that doesn't sound like a place I want to visit. And say I didn't go last week and was doing much more about the RV. That's good. Adil is here saying Kia ora, Robin, Laura, and all the viewers. And
Kia ora, Adil.
We also have Denis and Geraldine, which are saying hello, Robin and Laura.
Good morning, Denise and Geraldine.
Yeah, here you go. So, the way this live show works is you guys get to ask us all the questions you want about traveling in New Zealand, because we kind of are the experts of traveling in New Zealand. We are the writers behind the NZ Pocket Guide website, which is New Zealand's largest travel guide. But as you are coming up with your questions and just interacting with us in the live chat, we kind of have a bit of a theme of the week, and we also kind of like to watch us doing silly activities around New Zealand. So without further ado, let's get that rolling, shall we? We are going to take you to the Tongariro River, right in the heart of the North Island of New Zealand, for the most affordable whitewater rafting trip in the country,
yes,
which is quite good. and quite on theme with the theme of this week, because today we're going to be talking about our top 5 most affordable places to visit in New Zealand. That's right, if you are planning to travel around New Zealand but are on a budget, you may want to focus on those few areas where you'll be able to save some bucks that you can spend in more expensive activities. We're not going to try to do a trip in New Zealand where you'll be able to spend $0, because that's simply not possible. But we will still try to pick out some activities where there are really good value for money in some specific spots around New Zealand. So it's just going to be a nice hour of us picking 5 places that we think you can kind of do a lot of free and cheap things there, and see if they float your boat for your trip. So
we'll also be adding locations where there are cheap places to stay as well. We'll be talking about affordable accommodation, affordable activities, and places where you don't have to travel too far to get to the activities that are surrounding the area.
Indeed.
Or at least you can in a cheaper way. But all is to be revealed.
Exactly. All right, so go nuts with your questions in the live chat. In the meantime, let's begin talking about traveling on a budget in New Zealand. Before we unveil our first place that is affordable in New Zealand, let's talk quickly about how to travel on the cheap around New Zealand. Talk transportation, because you've got to make your way from A to B, don't you?
Yes, there's a lot of B's to make your way to in New Zealand, so...
Wow. best places, I guess, is beach from. Okay, so a couple of ways to travel on the cheap in New Zealand. So first up is car or camper van. So how can you make that cheaper?
Well, you can rent a car, which there are, economy or cheaper.
By the way, that
versions.
whitewater rafting trick starts on a high. I just want to point it out. We were literally just kind of carrying the raft a minute ago.
Yeah, it was just like straight into the rapids, off you go. So you can opt for cheaper car rentals. Usually smaller cars are cheaper, also more fuel efficient.
Yep.
There is a little bit of false information that you need to get like a big SUV or a four-wheel drive.
Do not need a 4-wheel drive when traveling in New Zealand. That's right.
All the roads that you will usually be traveling on are either fully sealed roads or there are obviously gravel roads in New Zealand, but a lot of them are in really good condition. And usually on a normal trip to New Zealand, you wouldn't be going into the backcountry where you would need a 4-wheel drive. So usually a small economy car is absolutely all you need. There's also the way to go down the road, which is camper van or that sort of route. So we did talk just a couple of weeks ago about comparing these two options between cars and camper vans in New Zealand. Basically, getting a cheaper car and staying in cheaper accommodation works out cheaper than hiring a camper van and staying in either free accommodation but also the necessary holiday parks and campgrounds that you will need to go to in a few times during your trip.
That said, if you're planning to travel on a camper van in New Zealand, the way to make it cheaper will be to do it in a low season in New Zealand, which is in winter, which is right now. So June, July, and August, where the prices are going significantly lower. If you're planning on traveling in a high season in New Zealand, which is all our summer months, let's say all the way from October all the way down to March, well, at that point, a car with budget accommodation is vastly cheaper than with a camper van.
Absolutely.
All right, so another way to travel around New Zealand on the cheap is the national bus services, which is called Intercity.
Yeah, so this is by far the cheapest way to travel around nationally around the whole country. There is only one main sort of bus company, Intercity. They do work with like smaller companies in the South Island, but usually when you're booking through, say, the Intercity website, it's taking you all to the same company. So that is the cheapest way to get around, and fares, depending on how long your journey is, they tend to be ranging from about $20 to $80.
Exactly. The other way to travel on the cheap in New Zealand is, kind of organized bus tours. So there's two options. There is like your classic kind of escorted bus tours and you hop on a hop-off bus tours. Laura, do you want to give a bit of detail on both?
Yeah, so when we talk about an escorted bus tour, that's more of like a fully guided trip. So you have accommodation included. You may have a few meals included. Usually on backpacker escorted bus tours, it's just breakfast that would be included. And you're basically on a set itinerary the whole way around the country, and obviously you choose which itinerary that is because there are various different options to choose from. in comparison, the hop on hop off bus tours is the option to basically, as the name suggests, hop off the bus at set place, well, at any place along the itinerary. So it does follow a set itinerary, but you can choose to hop off for a few days and then get back on the bus on a different bus tour that's following the same route, say a few days later. So that offers a tiny bit more flexibility. Usually not as much is included in these tours. You will have to pay for your accommodation on the go. You'll have to pay for all your food. So there's less inclusions, but more flexibility.
Okay, another point of transportation that pretty much everybody will have to take in New Zealand is the ferry.
Yes, so in order to get between the North Island and the South Island, you will need to take the ferry. There are two ferry companies, the Inter-Islander and the Blue Bridge Ferry. And yeah, best thing to do is just compare the prices for the dates that you want to travel with the vehicle, or if you're just a passenger, you can take them as just a passenger as well. To find the cheapest option, it's usually just comparing the prices for your chosen travel dates.
Yeah, if you want to hear which one is the cheapest, usually Blue Bridge is cheaper than Intercity, but it depends on your sailing date. And finally, you have the option to take domestic flight, which quite often actually can save you a lot of money if you plan your trip properly.
Yeah, so say that you start your trip in Auckland, maybe you finish your trip in Christchurch. If you are taking your flight out of New Zealand in Auckland, then usually a good connection is to take that domestic flight from Christchurch to Auckland, or Queenstown to Auckland is another popular sort of domestic flight route. So it's sort of a good way to either like kickstart your trip, or get back to your starting point quickly in New Zealand. We don't necessarily recommend doing domestic flights for any other aspects of your trip. Like usually it's not really that common in New Zealand. Like New Zealand's much more of a road tripping country. There's so much to see along the way. So if you're just trying to hit, say, like, oh, I only want to go to Queenstown and Christchurch and Wellington, and then you skip out all the driving in between just to fly between those areas, then that's usually A, expensive, and B, really, you're missing a lot of what traveling in New Zealand is about. So you would miss a lot of amazing things to see.
All right, so that wraps up the transportation aspect of traveling in New Zealand affordably. Let's start talking about our 5 favorite affordable places in New Zealand. And let's begin with where we are at right now, which is the Tongariro National Park.
Yes.
So right now, this video right here is us whitewater rafting. Right now, currently we're training for the upcoming whitewater rafting on the Tongariro River. So that explains this, and that's why you're watching us do whitewater rafting. Also, it is the most affordable whitewater rafting in New Zealand. All right, so Laura, the Tongariro National Park, tell us why it's a good, affordable place.
So Tongariro National Park, the main attractions to do there are hiking, which there are many, many free hikes to do, which is great. But of course, Tongariro National Park is mainly known for the Tongariro Crossing, which, interestingly, that is one hike you do have to pay for. You do have to book it through the Department of Conservation website, but it is still very, very affordable, much cheaper than a lot of the paid activities in New Zealand. And you also will need to get shuttle transport, which costs between, depending on where you stay, $35 to $60 return. However, to make those costs extra cheap is to either stay in the Whakapapa village, which is spelt WH for that F sound, and there's National Park Village. So they're the two closest.
There is a link in the description below that will go through an entire itinerary, which is on the cheap in New Zealand 1 month, and you can follow a lot of those destinations in there with links to accommodation we're going to be recommending as well.
Yes. So staying in those two villages is the way to get closest to the Tongariro crossing to make it like a cheaper experience for you. But on top of that, say you don't want to do the Tongariro crossing, say that is, maybe a full day hike is too much, or maybe you're visiting in winter when the Tongariro crossing is usually, it's closed for...
We're not facing the right way, but we're eating bushes.
Yeah, it's closed for casual hikers. Then there are a ton of different short walks in that area, and you can spend all day or even say 3 days discovering them all, seeing lots of different landscapes, your volcanic landscapes, waterfalls, beautiful rivers and streams and forests. So you have so many different hikes to do in that area. So yeah, that's all the sort of things to do nailed down. Just a couple of tracks that we can recommend is the Taranaki Falls, the Torfai Falls, the Ridge Track, Silica Rapids Walk.
My favorite.
Yeah, Silica Rapids is really cool. So yeah, there is some really good options for experiencing that area on the cheap. Now, when it comes to accommodation, you have a lot of backpacker accommodation options, especially in National Park Village. So, for instance, Manawhenua Lodge has some dorm rooms or private rooms for really cheap. National Park Backpackers, again, has dorm rooms and a climbing wall. If you get a bit of a rainy day, you can do a bit of climbing. Howard's Mountain Lodge again and Crossing Lodge both have options to do dorm rooms and private rooms. Unfortunately, in Whakapapa Village, you don't have any sort of dorm rooms exactly if you want to go really cheap, but you do have the Whakapapa Holiday Park if you are traveling in an RV or you want a private room that's cheap, or Scotel Hotel, that also has cheap private rooms as well. So you do have some really good budget accommodation options in that area. And if you do check out the itinerary that we link below, we also give you more links to a whole comparison of all the budget accommodations in that area, so you can do a thorough check of where would be the best place for you.
Thorough investigation, that's
Yes.
right. So yeah, so the Tongariro National Park is a great place to visit in New Zealand if you're on a budget. And on top of that, one of the really good things is that, well, it's not super expensive to visit it, but it's also super iconic. I every single time we do like luxury itineraries or family itineraries, any type of travelers always want to be able to go to the Tongariro National Park. So you have options for all ranges of budget, and it's still extremely enjoyable in any of those budgets. And that's really what we focused on. As New Zealand get more and more and more expensive, what we're focusing on in this video is to make sure that all the destinations we're going to be talking about are still extremely enjoyable even on a budget. Because there are some destinations which are definitely just kind of pricing out certain budget levels and are just making it not enjoyable whatsoever. So the destination we're focusing on right now are those which are still very much enjoyable. All right, so let's move on to the next one, Laura.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's drive south and head to Wellington, the capital city
Yes.
of New Zealand.
So, thankfully, the capital city of New Zealand is still an affordable place to visit.
And it's also a place where you have to go anyway, as most people will make their way between the northern and the southern, and then this is where you're catching the ferry, right?
Yes.
So no matter what, you've got to go there. So it has to have some cheap option, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the good news is that, well, in the city centre, you do have some really good sort of free activities that are all within, relative walking distance. If you are, you fit, you can definitely walk to all of these places. So Te Papa Museum is the National Museum of New Zealand, and it is huge. You can spend so much time here learning about everything there is about New Zealand in terms of like the social history, the flora and fauna, the volcanoes and earthquakes. There's some really cool stuff to see there, so that's definitely a recommendation whether you're on a budget or not. You can also check out the views from Mount Victoria. So, if you are feeling active, you can do a little bit of a hike through the forests where some of the Lord of the Rings was filmed. And then at the top, you get a view over Wellington and the Wellington Harbour. You can also, for very cheap, take the cable car, or you can hike up to the top of the Botanic Gardens, again, for more beautiful views of Wellington. And also, amazing scenery to be seen along the Wellington waterfront. And there's also cheap activities, for instance, like Zealandia. So although this is a paid activity, Zealandia is a bird sanctuary, which is basically it has like a predator-proof fence around
Predator-proof fence. It's a hard thing to say, isn't it?
Around this sort of greenish area, very close to the city centre. And basically you will see birds sort of out. It's kind of like they're out in the wild, but they don't really leave the area because it is such a great habitat for the native birds of New Zealand. So going there is a really amazing way to see some of the really odd and different birds of New Zealand and learn more about the nature that New Zealand's famous for. So that's a really good way to see it very cheaply. Also, they do offer free shuttles from the city centre, from the iSite, which is the information centre in Wellington, or you can drive there yourself. But that leads on to another fact that Wellington is cheap to visit, because if you do want to reach to some of those outer city attractions, for instance, if you want to go to the Red Walks,
if you have your own car,
Walkway,
it's really awesome.
yeah, if you have your own car, but also with Wellington, it is one of the few places of all the places you'll visit in New Zealand that has cheap public transport. So, you know, public transport's not available everywhere. So if you do want to get somewhere quite easily, then they do have regular buses. So that's really good as well. In terms of accommodations, they do have a variety of hostels there, albeit these hostels are a little bit pricier for dorm rooms than other places in New Zealand. We're not going to lie. Some of the dorm rooms are about 50 New Zealand dollars, 60 New Zealand dollars, but they are quite flash packery. They're quite, it's more like a place for backpackers to go treat themselves. But the good thing is the private rooms, you have a ton of different options for cheap private rooms everywhere. So Robin can give us maybe a few examples.
Yeah, so we do have the Marion hostels.
Yeah, so that's the really good sort of flash packery hostel option, although that is always booked out, so you have to get booked in quickly.
You have to book really early. We also have Microtel, which is by Wyndham.
Yeah, so that's a really good option for a private room if you want to have that hotel experience on the cheap. That's a good one.
The Dwellington.
And Dwellington is another backpacker hostel. Again, quite flashy for a hostel.
Anything else that come to your mind, Dora?
The Trinity Hotel and Capital View Motor Inn, they're both really, good sort of budget sort of hotels, motels where you will get your own sort of private space as well.
All right, so Wellington is the place where you will have to go and visit it because you're taking the ferry going down to the South Island, but it's still worth spending a couple of days if you want to explore the outer areas. There is also plenty of cheap eats over there in Wellington. There is really a lot of like different little eateries, hole in the walls, which are really awesome to discover, and you can have both a touristic experience and a culinary experience on the cheap. All right, so before we move on to the South Island and more destinations there, what is Leo saying?
Leo is here saying, hey guys, how are you doing? I lived in New Zealand last year, actually, Auckland City, and I'd love to come back soon. Oh, cool.
Oh, nice.
Where else would you live in New Zealand if you were to come back? Would you go back to Auckland, or would you go somewhere else? Maybe?
Well, since it is a video about the top affordable places to visit in New Zealand, we recommend against Auckland, of course, because what are you on about? Auckland is so bloody expensive.
Yeah.
All right. So, so remember that all of you guys can always ask us your questions in the live chat. In the meantime, we continue talking about our theme of the week, and we are watching us doing the cheapest whitewater rafting activity in the country, which is on the Tongariro River. All right, so let's move on to our third affordable destination, and this is beautiful Franz Josef. So yes, we do know that there are some expensive activities to do in Franz Josef Glaciers. There is the heli hike, there is the skydive, there is all that. We do understand that those does not make Franz Josef look like a cheap place to visit. However, it's a fantastic base to explore the Greater West Coast and also the area of Franz Josef, with a lot of really awesome things to do there on the cheap. Laura, take it away.
Yeah, so exploring the landscape that has been left in the Franz Josef Glacier's wake is really amazing. So, for instance, going on the Franz Josef Glacier Valley Walk, you can do a hike through the valley that has been carved by the Franz Josef Glacier. You'll see waterfalls, you'll see all sorts of dramatic mountain landscapes, and then far off in the very far distance, you'll see the Franz Josef Glacier itself. However, there are other better walks to see Franz Josef Glacier. For instance, the Roberts Point track. This is a full day track. Definitely not for the faint-hearted, but if you are, feeling fit, the trail itself is obviously really easy to follow, as are most trails in New Zealand, so you don't need to worry about that. But if you're ready for a full day hike, then the Roberts Point track takes you over some really amazing swing bridges through beautiful valleys and forest, and then you will see the Franz Josef Glacier as far off into the distance. But this whole landscape, you have some really incredible hikes to do. There's also some shorter walks if you wanted to, take it easy. The Okarito Lagoon takes you over on boardwalks over this really interesting habitat, which has some animals and bird life there that you can't find anywhere else in New Zealand, like the white herons. So that's a really interesting place to check out. There's also the terrace walk as well, taking you through beautiful forest, and that's a very easygoing walk to do that you can do with families. If you go at night, you can see glowworms as well. And then for a cheap activity to do in Franz Josef, check out the West Coast Wildlife Centre. So there you'll see, you'll get to learn about the interesting nature of New Zealand, specifically about the specific species of kiwi bird that lives in the area. They do have a kiwi hatchery there, so they have a really interesting sort of information and even opportunity to go behind the scenes if you pay a little bit extra to see the kiwi bird chicks there, which is so cute.
And if you have saved enough money on your travel and want to treat yourself to some really unique activities, I can't recommend enough the people at Franz Josef Wilderness Tours, which offer amazing kayaking tours on Glacier, Glacier lakes. Some really cool, like what was the other tour they do?
The kayaking, or sorry, I was just reading it.
The fishing tours, fishing tours. So they do a lot of different tours like that, which are really cool. So yeah.
They do mountain biking as well.
Mountain biking, that's the one.
Rentals.
Yeah, mountain biking rentals. Yeah, so that's also a great way to kind of visit that. So yeah, I'm recommending those guys. I really like them, and I also think that the value for money is there. All right, so let's talk accommodation in Franz Josef. Where can you stay at?
Yeah, so Franz Josef does have a really good selection of both backpacker accommodations and sort of like cheap, affordable private rooms as well. So Rainforest Retreat covers all aspects of every traveller. They'll have backpacker rooms, they have private rooms, they have camper van, powered sites for your camper van, all that good stuff, and it's all nestled within the beautiful rainforest of Franz Josef. So yeah, that's a really good option to go for. There's also Franz Josef Montrose, which is more of your sort of more affordable private accommodation option, as well as Alpine Glacier Motel, sort of in the same category there. Glowworm accommodation is a good backpacker accommodation, so if you're looking for more dorm rooms, that's a good one to go for. And then finally, Franz Josef Top 10 Holiday Park is a good option if you are camping, if you're going with a camper van, or you want sort of a cheap room as well. They do have more affordable cabins there.
And one of the great things about Franz Josef is that it also allows you to be able to, within 2 hours drive, either way, north or south, explore much more of the west coast of New Zealand. And the great thing about the west coast of the south island of New Zealand is that pretty much all the activities to do in there are hikes or viewpoints and all that. And so you can go all the way to Hokitika for the famous Hokitika Gorge, all the way down to the Blue Pool of Haast and everything in between, all within that kind of half-day kind of trip out of Franz Josef. So if you want to extend your stay there, it's a good idea. And also extending your stay in Franz Josef could be the right thing to do, because the weather on the west coast can be really tempestuous, if I can say. And so it will allow you to be like, okay, well, the weather's not so good just right here where I am. If I'm driving 3 hours south or 2 hours north or something like that, you will be able to get much better weather, and so then you can kind of postpone your activities here and there. Speaking of tempestuous, those waters are tempestuous. We are enjoying ourselves for sure.
It's very distracting. I find myself like watching it in between, and I'm like, and then you just talk to me like, sorry, I was just watching this video.
It's cool. I really enjoy it. I really do like it.
Yeah.
All right. So we have talked about Tongariro. We have talked about Wellington. Mm-hmm. We have talked about Franz Josef. Our next stop, as the top 5 best affordable places to visit in New Zealand, is actually beautiful Mount Cook. Although accommodations are going to be extremely limited, the area itself is so stunning, and pretty much everything to do there is staring at the sky, staring at the mountains, staring at the valleys, staring at the rapids, staring at the lake.
Yeah.
And so therefore that makes it very, very affordable to do, because all those things are pretty much free.
Yeah.
All right, Laura, take it away. Talk about Mount Cook.
Yeah, again, you can walk your socks off in our Rocky Mount
Walk your socks off, that's right. It costs you a lot of money in socks investment.
Yes.
Your sock budget exploding thanks to Laura.
But yeah, the good thing about Mount Cook is that it is all about seeing the natural landscape in all its glory. So doing several hikes in the area is a good way to spend your time while having a really amazing experience, getting amazing photos, all that good stuff. So yeah, you really don't have to spend too much money to actually enjoy the area. So the Hooker Valley track is the one that everybody's heard of for exploring Aoraki Mount Cook. It's about a 3-hour return hike, and it's pretty easy going. It's a very well maintained track, so it's one that's accessible to, you know, most people that think they can hike for 3 hours, which is quite a lot of people. You can also do, say, the Red Tarns track, which is a nice, a much shorter walk up into uphill a little bit through beautiful forest until you get to a very beautiful little lake with some reflective views in there. And yeah, there's other hikes for the more adventurous, like the I think it's called the Sealy track. So yeah, that one is like, it takes you really high up into the mountains, not up Mount Cook or anything crazy like that, but basically that's the start to the Mount Cook hike. So yeah, that will get you to some incredible views, and it's really an awesome full day hike. Just make sure that you check all the weather forecasts and all that stuff, and be safe up there. But if you want to break from hiking, there's some other things that you can do as well. There's the Aoraki Mount Cook National Park Visitor Center. So this is where the Department of Conservation has their visitor center, but it's also a little bit like a museum. So you can, see a few exhibitions about the place, and, maybe keep out the rain if you are unfortunately there on a rainy day. There's also...
What do you mean it never rains in New Zealand?
And also similar to that is the Sir Edmund Hillary Alpine Centre. So this is another sort of museum-esque attraction where you can learn more about the mountaineering history of New Zealand. But on a night, Aoraki Mount Cook is within the Dark Sky Reserve. So you can do some incredible stargazing here. If you want to do that on the cheap, all you need to do is sort of make your way away from Mount Cook Village out to a place with less light pollution. Just wait for your eyes to adjust and have a look at the stars and be amazed. So yeah, that's obviously the way to do it cheaply, but there are stargazing tours there as well if you wanted to pay a little bit extra to maybe have access to powerful telescopes and learn more context about some of the stars that you're seeing. So that's all not all of them, but that's some of the amazing free and cheap things to do in Mount Cook. Now, when it comes to accommodation, Mount Cook...
I just wanted to point out that Denis and Geraldine are agreeing with you. They remember that Mount Cook is incomparable. They said they stayed in the dog campsites that Laura is going to talk about shortly. And they did the Hooker Valley track, and it says it was unforgettable and affordable.
Yes.
There you go. I like that. All of that rhymes. That's pretty good. Nice. All right, so let's talk about accommodation, which are relatively affordable in Mount Cook. And that's a little bit of a tall order, right? The accommodations in Mount Cook are very limited. The main one is a luxury hotel called Hermitage, which is really, it's fabulous, but obviously not affordable. Do not meeting the criteria of the theme of this video. Although if you can afford it, it's a great stay there. What do we have on the affordable side, Laura?
So on the affordable side, first of all, like Robin says, it's very limited accommodation. So as soon as you see a place in Mount Cook that is within your budget, you should book it as soon as possible, because obviously Mount Cook is quite a popular destination. They just don't have enough accommodation to, necessitate everybody that wants to go there. So a really good option to look into would be the Mount Cook Lodge and Motel. You are getting obviously private rooms, but they're on the cheap. You will not get any dorm rooms in Mount Cook. So for backpackers looking for dorm rooms, that's just not available anymore in Mount Cook. If you are traveling in a camper van or you're camping, then you have a couple of options there. So you can stay at the Glen Tanner Park Centre, which is on the way up to Mount Cook Village. It's a little bit of a drive outside, but that would be sort of the closest full holiday park accommodation where you will get powered sites and say private cabins and stuff to stay in. However, you can also stay at the White Horse Campground, which is a Department of Conservation campground located just outside of Mount Cook National Park Village. So you will be pretty close to all the sort of hiking trails that we've talked about. But with that, you won't have any powered sites. You'll just have like tent sites and be able to park up your camper van there. But they have quite limited facilities there. But that's a good option if you do have, you've got all the camping gear or your camper van at the ready. And then other places to stay would be more further outside of Mount Cook National Park. So at the bottom of Lake Pukaki, which is a bit of maybe a half an hour drive away from Mount Cook Village, there's freedom camping areas. So if you have a self-contained camper van or motorhome, then you can stay there for free. And then going out a little bit more, you would get to, say, the Twizel Holiday Park, located in the town of Twizel, which is the closest town to Mount Cook Village. And then also in Twizel is the High Country Lodge Motels and Backpackers, and that's where you'll find some of those dorm room accommodations. So you can stay outside of Mount Cook on the cheap, but mostly if you do have a camper van, you can stay at the White Horse, Glen Tanner, sort of close to Mount Cook. Otherwise, book Mount Cook Lodge and Motel really quickly because they're usually pretty fully booked.
I'm going to add what Leo says on the live chat when he says that he stayed in the front of Lake Taupo. That was quite near Lake Tekapo, sorry. In the lake front of Lake Tekapo, and that was very near Mount Cook. So yeah, that's another really good option. And also, since Lake Tekapo is on the bucket list of a lot of people, it's a pretty good insight. So good job, Leo. I love that.
Excellent.
All right, and so that's 4 right here. So let's move on to our last affordable places to visit in New Zealand where you can do heaps. And that's the the city of Christchurch.
Yeah, so people may find themselves in Christchurch maybe towards the end or the beginning of their trip.
Yeah, usually that's a starting or end point of your trip for sure. As Laura was mentioning, it's a great place if you want to save some money onto your rental or anything like that to kind of decide. That's the point where you fly back to Auckland and then fly back home, for instance.
Yeah, so the good thing about Christchurch is that there's not many activities there that sort of demand you to pay a lot of money. The things that
I love the intonation, the demand you to pay.
It's not like there's not really that many experiences there that cost a lot of money. The main things to do there are all either free or relatively cheap. So for instance, Christchurch is known as the Garden City, so it does have a range of beautiful gardens to wander about. So Botanic Gardens in Christchurch City Centre is a good place to start. The Canterbury Museum, although it is currently under construction and just having a pop-up museum at the moment.
Renovation, I think.
Renovation, yeah. Yes, renovations, that's what I meant to say. But yeah, usually when that is open, that is free to visit as well, and a really interesting museum, although I'm sure the new museum will be better. You can go check out some of the suburbs like Sumner or New Brighton Beach. If you don't have any transport of your own, they do have affordable bus transport in Christchurch again, so that's also where you can sort of explore the Christchurch area quite easily on the cheap if you don't have your own transport.
And in fact, if you don't have your own transport, you can go quite far out of Christchurch. You can even take a bus to go all the way to the Banks Peninsula, the town of Akaroa, for example, which is a fantastic place to visit for a day out. If you have your own transport, you can obviously drive yourself there, and it's a really cool place to visit. But if you don't, you can take public transport, which is basically kind of a shuttle that will take you there and back in Akaroa.
Yeah. And then really cool sort of museum to check out would be the Air Force Museum as well.
Yes.
You can take a cheap public bus to get to that area as well. So yeah, there's quite a few really nice affordable things to do in Christchurch, and even better, there's several cheap accommodations that you can stay in as well.
Which is where you can shave off much more onto the cost of your trip for sure.
Yeah, so when you're staying in Christchurch, whether you're a backpacker and staying in a dorm room or you want a private room, places like the Beeley Quarter is a good option. They've got some very good cheap accommodations there. Southwark Hotel and Apartments is a good option, especially if you're self-catering, if you want sort of your own space, but yeah, it's really cheap and you have access to cooking facilities. That's a good way to save on the money by making your own meals. Break free on Cashel, that's another sort of hostel and private room situation where it's really nice and cheap there. If you are in a camper van or doing camping, or if you want a private room and access to some fun facilities, then Tasman Holiday Parks Christchurch is a great option, especially for kids. They have like swimming pools, they have all sorts of crazy stuff there. So yeah, that's a really good like sort of fun holiday park. And then finally, for a nice hotel right in the city centre that's really cheap, then Hotel Give. Give me your money. I think it's more to say that they do some social work and stuff like that. But yeah, Hotel Give is another good option.
All right, so that wraps up our options for 5 top affordable places to visit in New Zealand, and that's basically the end of the scripted portion of this show. If you do have any questions, put them in the live chat. We'll hang out here for an extra about 10 minutes. Aside from that, if you do want to know more about each of the places we talked about, there's a link in the description below. There's also all the different activities and accommodation that we suggested with links, names, spellings, and all that. So make sure to check that out. And if you want to click some of the buttons, there is 8 people watching right here. Right here we have 4 likes only, so just click on some of the buttons to give us some of the likes. It makes the YouTube happy. And aside from that, what else? Oh yeah, we are on a Patreon, so you can join us on Patreon. We have a phone, like a video call at the end of all those live show for about an hour where we chat if you want some help to plan your trip. We offer trip planning services as well. And a new thing, we now sell ebooks, so you can check out the ebooks on the website or somewhere. I haven't linked anywhere. You can check that out.
Yeah, if you head to nzpocketguide.com, if you want to basically get all the information that we have on nzpocketguide.com without having to access the internet, then we are selling our ebook version of it. So just head to the website. It's pretty obvious where it is. Yeah,
it's bright and red, I think. We're not good at peddling stuff, guys. We don't want you to spend too much of your money. If you want to support us, you can. Otherwise, we're stuck on a rock. Here you go. All right. Adil says, lot of hiking trail mentioned today. Are any of them wheelchair accessible?
Okarito Lagoon would be a really good one, which was the one in Franz, Josef, where you're in the beautiful wetlands.
That's pretty much it, I think.
That's the first one that came to my mind. So I'd say the terrace walk. It's got
there's stairs in between, and in between on the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I thought there was it was all gravel, but yeah, Okarito Lagoon is the one that we can definitely say. But for the rest of them, the good thing, Adil, is that any of the tracks that we mentioned, if you go into the Department of Conservation website, they have a little icon to say whether walks are wheelchair accessible or not. So that's a really good feature on the Department of Conservation website if you want to dive deeper into some of those hikes.
More deeper.
That's
right, more deeper. Leo says, Christchurch is the most beautiful city I've been to. Stunning gardens, parks, and more.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, I agree.
I'm glad you love Christchurch.
Yeah, that's a really nice city. As far as, we don't have that many cities in New Zealand. We mostly have towns, right? So, as far as cities goes, Christchurch is quite awesome and do really like it.
Yeah. He also says, I've been to several cities. I think it's funny when Kiwis say that Auckland doesn't have the spirit of New Zealand. Especially Kiwi people from the South Island.
Yeah, I mean, I say that too. And I've been in New Zealand for 16 years now. And I have the same feeling.
I have that feeling now that I've been living in New Zealand for 10 years. I feel like I've been a bit spoilt by the rest of New Zealand. But however, when I did first arrive in New Zealand and my sort of background was mostly being in cities in the north of England, obviously Auckland seemed pretty fantastic in comparison. So there was a lot to love about Auckland. Like, I do love the sort of like how close you are to the water. You can take ferries to all these amazing islands, and I love how multicultural it is as well. So you can meet people from all over the world, and that's like definitely the really big highlights, I would say, about Auckland. So but when you've lived in New Zealand, I guess as long as I have now, and you are surrounded by beautiful nature, I kind of favour more the natural aspects of New Zealand now compared to what is available in Auckland, which is obviously a lot more urbanised.
Anthony says, I like Wellington, but it definitely lives up to the windiest city I know of. Yeah, it's apparently the windiest city in the world, so yeah. I agree with that. It is very, very windy. Adil says, thank you, Robbie and Laura, for all the assistance. Really appreciated. What is the theme for the next show? What is the theme, Laura, next show?
Oh, I have no idea. What is the theme, Robin?
I have no idea. I haven't scheduled it yet, so no idea.
You'll just have to join us next week and find out.
Yeah. As you can see, even with this thumbnail, we're trying a couple of different new things right here. See if that's, kind of springs something, a bit more activities on the channel or not. As we kind of reevaluating the fact that, we don't get that many views. So we'll see what we make happen next week. Lot of moving parts at the moment. Seeing if we can make some emulate a little bit of activities in here. Leo says, guys, I think it's very funny when Kiwis don't like Auckland. Yeah. Laura was answering that message that you said above. Yeah. I mean, it's a city. That's the thing. I think what people mostly like about New Zealand is the countryside. So I think as soon as you kind of lock them up in the city, it's a bit like, yeah. So there's a bit. I think there's a bit of that in there. I don't think it's really like not like. It's just I think it's a case of the grass is always greener, right? It's kind of like even if you have it like amazing in Auckland, then you kind of look just next door, just that on the countryside, and then it's really, really awesome. So I think there's a little bit of that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys enjoyed watching us whitewater rafting, by the way? I think we've been doing pretty awesome. It has been some kind of raging rapids, but we maneuvered them pretty well. We're professional by now, aren't we?
Yeah, it's pretty epic. This whitewater rafting is, if you recall watching our video a couple of weeks ago about whitewater rafting in New Zealand, this one is when the dam release is open for the Tongariro River, which opens up another section of the river, which is grade 4, which is a bit more epic than the lower river, where they usually do their trips. So yeah, this is like a much more adventurous than your average whitewater rafting in Tongariro. But yeah, I have to say the lower part, I do prefer the scenery of the lower part of the river, where it's grade 3 and where most trips usually happen. But this one, the rapids are definitely more like, this is your adventure section. Yeah.
Raging rapids. All right, so everybody, this is going to wrap up this video. Thank you very much for all the questions and comments. That was lovely. We see you back next week at the exact same time. And in about 15 minutes, we'll do a Patreon live show where we basically just do a Google Meet where we all can chat and everything. So if you feel like joining us there, join us on Patreon. It's heaps of fun. In the meantime, everybody, have a lovely week.
Yes, have a lovely week.
Stay safe, and I'm here until the end, says Anthony. I love that. Always the catchphrase.
Yes.
I was almost missing somebody. What is somebody saying? I think that's Leo says, thanks, guys. See ya, Leo. Bye-bye.
See you, Leo. Bye, everybody.